Good morning, nerds. Today we are going to switch gears and do a different tutorial. So this is not part of the Unity Basics tutorial. This is more of an intermediate kind of a thing. We're going to be focused in on the Unity UI system, otherwise known as Canvas. And we're going to be doing probably 3 to 4 tutorials in this set. And then after that, I don't know, I might go back to doing basics. I might do a different game walkthrough. We'll see from there. But the focus on this one is Canvas, and in terms of parameters, my goal here, I was working on this with some students, is really to demonstrate some of the power of Canvas, some of the extensibility of Unity in terms of being able to add packages, and really trying to use Canvas objects to interact with each other as much as I possibly can. And then we're also going to do a little tiny bit of procedural generation towards the end, just to give kind of a notion of how that works and how to use code to drive our instantiations and some of our other objects. So, having said that, I made some graphics, which I will probably upload to YouTube, but there's not very many. There's just these 3 here you can kind of see peeking above the top of my screen. So I'm going to go ahead and just drag those into my game right now. I really should probably I'm going to make a sprites folder for those. But really, one of them is just a big giant cookie. There's 4 power-up icons, and for point of order, those are 70 by 70 pixel sprites. And then I just have one generically large one, and I don't actually remember how big that guy is. Oh, he's 64 by 64, but we're definitely going to do some enlarging there. Excuse me. Okay, so one of the first things we're going to do here is install an extra package that we aren't going to use right away, but I really like it. And that is this Unity UI extensions. And if you search for it on Google, you can find it. It's the Unity UI extensions project. It's available on GitHub for free. And I'm planning on dropping a link in this tutorial to that extension. And as usual, if I forget, somebody please call me out in the comments and I will happily update the description to add that. But the thing that we're going to need, if we scroll down here, you can kind of see what it has in it. There's some samples here. There's definitely some control demos on their Tumblr page that really get into some detail. I'm personally a huge fan of the accordion one. There's quite a few really neat ones, but in this case, the one that we're going to care about is the radial slider, and we'll see how that works in, I think, probably session 2. And the thing I don't like about this one is that the instructions, I don't remember where they are even. They're up here somewhere. Getting started, no, but it's not right there. It's in here somewhere. Anyways, the instructions are not very good, I'm going to be honest. How do I get set up? Oh, here we go. It's talking about using the OpenUPM command line interface options, or you can do things manually using the package manager that frankly never seem to work very well. And if you're in previous prior to Unity 2018, this isn't going to work very well for you. I'm running 2022.3.22 F1 right now. You don't need to be running that specific version. This tutorial should work for anything about 2018 and up. But just to kind of give you the heads up that this package may or may not be clean. But I found the best way to install it is actually a little bit weird, is to use the Git link. And if you drop down this code window here up at the top of the page, and you just pull the entire HTTPS URL here, I'm just going to copy that. And we're going to go into Package Manager, and there's a few things that we're going to need to install. And actually, there's a few things we're going to need to adjust. So I'm going to pop into my Package Manager here. And first off, there is a lot of stuff in it right now. We don't need like a fraction of it. Although the 2 things that I do care, the thing I do care about is TextMesh Pro. Which I'm going to go ahead and update. I don't think that's strictly necessary, but it is asking me to, and we might as well, because we are going to be using TextMesh Pro quite extensively in this project. And then some of this other stuff I'm probably going to go through between tutorials and just kind of reduce. I definitely don't need JetBeans. I definitely don't need Visual Studio Code because I will be using Visual Studio for this. And there's a few other things. But I want to add that Git package. So I did already copy that URL. I'm going to go ahead and click the little arrow next to this plus sign here. And we're going to add package from Git URL. And we're just going to paste that URL in and click add. And you can see here it says, hey, we're adding a new package. And after a little bit, it's going to go ahead and install itself. And there we go. So we've got the Unity UI extensions package in. It was that easy. And the other instructions make it actually rather difficult. So this is a pretty simple way to go about it. And then the other thing that we're going to want to do is we are going to pop down to the Unity registry, which is in this where it says packages and project. We can switch that to Unity registry. And we want to add the 2D sprite package. That's going to allow us to do some slicing. We're going to go ahead and install that. And that's a package. We've used that in some of my other tutorials before. It allows you to do things like 9 slicing and stuff like that. And that's about it. We don't really need anything else in here, so we're going to go ahead and close Package Manager. And the one reality check that we're going to want to do real fast is I just want to go to my UI add and just make sure I see Unity extensions in here, and you can see all this stuff. We're not going to add anything right now, but that is validating that the project worked. In some versions of Unity, that'll appear down more towards the bottom. I've seen it in a few different places. And my UI on my other version of Unity is actually up in here somewhere. So your locations may be slightly different than mine, but all the content should be there. And then the last thing I want to do here, I did want to create a new folder and just make a sprites folder for this. Organization is good, and we're going to drop all 3 of those images into that sprites folder. And now we're going to mess with them just slightly. They're all PNGs with some transparency. What I want to do here is we're just going to make those sprites because we are going to be doing a lot of UI work with them. We're going to leave them as single. Instead of mesh type tight, I like to do full rect with a extrude edges of 0, not to generate the physics. And I'm going to switch my filter mode. It's going to look a little bit better if we do point no filter instead of bilinear. That's going to give us kind of that 8-bitty kind of a look, which for this I kind of like. And then we're going to go ahead and apply that. And we are going to then go into this one here. I don't want those 4 icons to be one single icon. So this one alone, we are going to switch to a multiple. And then we're going to pop into the sprite editor. We did have to apply that change. I'm going to jump into the sprite editor here. We're going to click on slice. And I'm just going to do, normally I like to be, if you've seen my previous tutorials, I definitely like to mess with the grid by size and kind of do everything by hand. But I do know that all of these, I made them all kind of in one batch. I know that they're perfect squares, and I know that they're all the same size. So I can do grid by cell count. And I'm just going to switch this to 2 columns and 2 rows. And you can see the red lines are cutting those up nicely. I'm going to go ahead and slice that. And we will apply that and then close, and you can see that I've got my 4 different images now instead of just 1. And if we unpack the other 2, we can see that they're just the 1 image, which is great. And then we're going to go ahead and add, in this case I want to add a text mesh button, and that's going to get us started. So if I go down to UI, we are going to add a button, Text Mesh Pro. Honestly, for a lot of this, we could use the legacy buttons, but I do like the Text Mesh Pro stuff. And we're going to see that show up on the screen. And a lot of people have complained about orientation and they don't know which way things are and which way things are supposed to be. And if I'm looking at this, actually the red X is going completely the wrong direction. When you're working in UI, it does use its own screen space, so it won't necessarily respect other objects, the camera view, etc. So normally what I do when I'm working on the UI stuff is I just click this little 2D button and shift myself into 2D. Kind of drag, kind of center. That's pretty good. I can see my screen space, and that's giving me a pretty good area to work. Okay, and the one thing that we will note is I can't see, there is text or on the button, but I can't see it right now because actually the text mesh packages haven't been loaded properly. We're not going to worry about that this moment because actually for this button we don't even want text, but it is a thing to note that it's an issue. So we're just going to kind of pay attention to that. Okay, so what we're going to do first is I want to set up my giant cookie button. That's kind of the core of Cookie Clicker. And so what I'm going to do here is I just want this entire button to be giant in the middle of the screen, and I don't want it to actually have this text. So I'm just going to start off by deleting the text out of it because we don't need that anyways. And I'm going to go to my button. And one of the important things that we need to note about how the UI system works is it uses rect transform instead of transform, and that allows us to actually attach to different areas of the screen and be relative to different things. So in normal Unity objects, like if I just create a sphere or something, it's going to be relative to Unity's center of the world. And the camera is relative to, again, the center of the world, and whatever the camera can see is what we see in the renderer. In Canvas, it's a little bit different because everything in Canvas works as like an overlay. And we can see this here. If I click on Canvas, the render mode is screen space overlay. And this is really kind of just going over, if I click on the game menu, you can see how it's overlaying on the main objects. But if I did something like added, I'm just going to add a 3D object in here for the heck of it. Don't follow along with this at home. I'm just going to throw a cube in there, and we can kind of see that cube kind of off in the distance. I'm going to make it just quite a bit larger, maybe 15 by 15 by 15, and we can kind of see it there off in the distance on our screen. But note that it's not part of Canvas, it's not part of this overlay system, and if I go to game, you can't see it at all. It's actually, I think it's down here in the lower left corner if I recall correctly, or it's somewhere else, but basically what we're seeing is not really accurate. It's only the things that are in my canvas that count, and really that's only UI objects that can be presented in Canvas, things that have a rect transform. So this cube with its normal transform is not part of my canvas at all, nor is it part of my UI. So we're just going to go ahead and delete that. I didn't really want it in there anyways, but we just wanted to kind of see how things work. The next thing that's important to note is that Canvas, the rect transform causes things to anchor, and it's all relative. So right now, this button is anchored at the center of the screen, which is what this rect transform is showing us. And it's relative, it's negative 265.5 by negative 101, 161 rather, sorry. And if you're following along at home, your numbers might be slightly different. But the point is that if I do something like readjust the screen, you're going to notice that that button does not necessarily stay in the lower left corner. It just kind of moves around. It stays, again, relative to that center. And if I adjust up, that button might just look at that. It's disappeared. So if I go into my game view, I can't see it at all. But if I increase the size of my game view, it starts showing up. Now, the cool thing about this, and we're going to do this with some text later, is we can change that anchor point. So if I anchor it, instead of relative to the center, we're going to anchor it to the lower left-hand side of the screen. And that's going to actually change things up a little bit. So now if I move the, if I adjust the size of the screen, you're going to notice that the button kind of does stay, it's kind of pushing itself in. And if I go to my game view, no matter what I do, that button is just kind of staying where it is. And that's because it's literally anchored in a little bit from the lower left side of the screen, and that's telling it to stay there. So we're going to take advantage of that with some of our other UI elements shortly. But for this particular button, I actually do want to anchor it to the center of the screen. I just want it to be in the center and bigger. And so what we're going to do here, and I'm going to also just resize my Unity window. This might make it easier for people who are following along. One of the things that I'm going to do here is we are going to recenter. It is still centered, and I'm just going to position it for now at the center of the screen. So now we are centered. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Okay, we are centered. And then now I want to make it a little bit bigger. And in my notes earlier, I think I did it around 500 by 500. Whoops, that should be 500 by about 500. That's a little bigger than I want. So let's go 400 by 400. And it's pretty good. I might split the difference. Let's go 450, 450. That's better. I want that cookie to be taking up most of my screen here. And again, if I go into my game view, look at that. That button is perfectly centered and just huge. It doesn't interact yet because we are not in play mode, but that's okay. And then I want to make it the cookie. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to target that UI sprite there, and we're just going to swap it for the cookie. And look at that. If I go into my button, or if I go ahead and run my game, not only that, but we also get kind of that graying effect because it is a button. And that's controlled down here by the different pressed colors and disabled colors and color multipliers and things like that. And we could even change that. If I wanted it to flash green, for example, or actually let's just make it flash bright red for a second. I don't know if you'll notice this with the red cookie, but when we click on it now, it definitely looks a little angrier. And I'm going to go ahead and undo that because I do like it being the other color, but I did want to just demo that. Okay, so that's going to gray tint it when we click on it, which kind of lets the user know, hey, there was a click there. And then the last thing I want to do here before we wrap up this particular stage of the tutorial is I want to create a text box and just validate that my button and click is working and show you guys how to interconnect objects. And so the first thing that we're going to do here is we are going to add another UI object, and it's very, very careful. You need to make sure that you do the UI version of this and not the 3D object version of this. But we're going to do UI text mesh pro. And the first thing that this is going to do is pop up a box, which I don't know why the button version doesn't do this, but it does say, hey, we need to import Text Mesh Pro Essentials in order to make this work. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. You can import the examples and extras if you want at home, but honestly, I would recommend that you don't. It doesn't really add anything and it just kind of clutters up your space, so I usually don't do that one. So I'm going to go ahead and just close this now that I've imported, and I've got my text object, which I would like to move to the upper left part of the screen. And again, just as a reminder, it is anchored to the center, so we're going to have some of the same problems that we had adjusting these objects, but I'm going to kind of position it where I want to. And I'm going to switch my anchor to the top right. Or I'm sorry, that's not the right direction. Let's try the top left. Again, that's going to adjust. So if I do end up resizing my objects or my game window, you're going to notice that it just kind of sticks about where I want it to. And we're going to leave new text for now because we're going to control this procedurally later. But the main thing that we're going to do here is I just want to show, hey, how can we interact with that object? And we could write some convoluted code that would do some of this, but the nice thing about button is that it does provide just an easy on-click method. So I'm just going to add a plus on this. So I am highlighted on, again, the button part of this. And what we can do is start talking to other objects. This is going to send a message when we do something. It'll send a message to another chunk of code or another object. And so I'm going to drag my Text Mesh Pro into the object, and just to demonstrate what we can do here, we can actually affect all kinds of things. We can transform, we can move, we can send messages, we can do all kinds of neat stuff. But for starters, just to demonstrate something that we can do, I'm going to go to my text meshes game object component, and we're going to trigger that set active. And I'm going to uncheck, I'm going to leave this box unchecked. So we're going to say set active false. If I check it, it's now true, but we're going to leave it false. And when we run, what this should do is when I click the button, it's triggered that button and that text object, and we've said, hey, set the set active to false. Obviously, I don't think I want to do that as my permanent goal, but we could also do other things. Like for example, in my buttons code, instead of targeting the game object, we could actually target the text mesh, and there's so many options here and things that we could do. But one of the things that we can do is I want to set my string text, and I'm just going to set it to something, and I'm just going to say you clicked me. And we're just going to run that. Again, I just want to see what happens here. And we can definitely affect that text mesh pro by doing that. That's just kind of an example of some of the things that we can play with this code, things that we can do by using clicks. And we can also, the other cool thing is I can do more than one thing. So if I click another plus here, I could do, 50 different things with literally one click of a button, and that would allow me to do all kinds of cool stuff. For example, maybe I change, let's just see what else we can do with that text box real fast. I can maybe change, I was going to see if I can change the color of it, but I don't know if the color is quite as exposed. And it doesn't look like it is. So we could also do, let's see. Yeah, there are some things that want to take in some floats. I don't see any like really, really easy ones to mess with that wouldn't completely screw me up. So let's just go ahead and leave those on. Ooh, we could set bool enabled. Let's do this. I'm gonna set my enabled to true. And then I'm going to go over here and just turn it off. So we're going to turn off that text. Again, we're kind of doing the opposite thing that we did last time. There's no text here, but when I click it, we both enabled it and changed the text in it. So we're just kind of proving that we can control another object. I do want to re-enable that though. I'm going to get rid of actually all of the stuff that we have in there right now because we do want to change some things for next time. So next time we're going to install a game manager, we're going to edit some of our initial variables, we're going to do quite a few other tricks, so I want to have that relatively raw here. So this is kind of a good stopping point. We've kind of demoed how a button works, we've learned how to import some other stuff. We learned how to add that Unity UI extensions code. So this is kind of a good stopping point. And in the next tutorial, we're going to learn how to use a game manager to control our clicks and our values and things like that. And then we'll start working through some of our power-ups. So I hope this tutorial worked out for you. If you enjoyed it, I would encourage you to click like and subscribe. And always, as we close, just remember to keep on creating. Thanks and have a great night, nerds.